Okay, Srizala start korta huncha aba. Yeah, start.
No, it's live on Facebook.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so good evening, everyone. I'm Srizala Prajapati, and I will be moderating today's session on second episode of Let's Talk. We'll be discussing on LLM and career prospects abroad. We have international energy lawyer Subrata Lamsal with us here today, and she did her undergraduate Okay. So Subrata Lamsal, she did her undergraduation in law from Nepal Law Campus and then went on to pursue post-graduation in energy law and international business law from the University of Groningen, the Netherlands, and Pace Law School, New York. She has also worked in three different jurisdictions, Nepal, uh, Netherlands, and New York. So for next 1 hour, we'll be discussing about pursuing a post-graduation in law abroad. So if time permits, and for your information here to assist anyone in LinkedIn who have questions regarding pursuing LLM in foreign universities. So if you're still left with questions that are unanswered in this session, you can email or you can find her in LinkedIn or email us your questions at advice@redluxadvice.com. Also on the side, we have Kailash Pandey, managing partner at Lex Advisors, who is practicing law in Nepal after completing his law course in Campus Law Center, Delhi University. So I welcome you all to today's webinar. And also we are live in Facebook through Lexpertise and YouTube. So without further ado, I would like to welcome our guest, Subrata, who despite the geographical and time distance have managed her time for this webinar. So hello, Subrata.
Hello.
Thank you so much for accepting our invitation.
You're welcome.
Okay, so you did your undergraduation in Nepal and post-graduation overseas. So how has your academic and professional career been so far?
It's an uphill battle. Up until now, it's been an uphill battle, and it's a lot of struggle. So I would say it was good. It was really good because I had all the experience, and I got to work in deals I wouldn't have worked otherwise had it been in Nepal. So that was pretty cool. And the fact that I have friends all over the world, that's even better. And I did my master's, like the first one, from Groningen. Groningen is one of the best universities for energy and climate law. So that kind of puts you ahead of everything, and it's a niche field. So it's like, even though you're a young lawyer starting out, because you're in a niche field, you're more, so basically people sort of like try to, recruit you, but it's not that easy. I don't know if I answered the question.
Okay. And so how is the situation up there in New York? Like, how has the coronavirus, the COVID-19 affected there?
You mean like the legal market or life in general?
Yeah, both.
Well, the hiring is on hold. So no one's really hiring right now unless you're a bankruptcy associate. So basically that's one of the things with law. But as far as like Corona is concerned, it's the same everywhere.
I
Everyone's
think
in a lockdown.
New York is one of the worstly hit cities out there, right? So
Oh yeah, it
how's
is.
it?
It's like it's hit hard. But
Yeah,
what my response was basically like, it's in a lockdown basically. So I don't even know what's going on outside.
right.
Okay. So this coronavirus, this COVID-19 has brought almost everything to a halt right around the globe. But universities around the globe have not have issued notices that they will be accepting applications despite this pandemic situation. So if universities are not stopping for the virus, then the applicants definitely should not make virus an excuse. So Subrata, shall we move on to our questions then?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so let's start with the basics. What do you think are the basics that students need to look for while seeking an LLM degree abroad?
Well, I can just tell you from my experience. So my experience has been like, when I was in law school, I wasn't even sure if I wanted to be in law school, to be honest. And then by the second year of law school, I was like, okay, this is what I really like. And then I started doing moot courts, international and national. And when I was in fourth year of law school, I guess I did Stetson. So it's an international environmental law moot court. And I actually enjoyed it a lot. So it's like, okay. And then we had international or environmental law the following year. So I took that course and eventually, so I guess like it just happened. Law basically found me more than I found law. And
Okay.
by the end of like my BA LLB, I was like pretty sure that I wanted to focus on climate and energy. So I applied to Groningen because I wanted to do energy, and that's one of the best universities where you can study energy in continental Europe. So that was my thing. So the bottom line would be that when you're looking for LLM anywhere, be it in Nepal or be it anywhere, you need to, because it's an investment. So even if you get a scholarship, it's an investment of your time, energy, effort, and everything. So you need to make sure that you're passionate about the thing that you're doing. If you're not extremely passionate, then you would struggle to find a job because you have to persevere a lot.
Okay, so you said that you were also almost confident about pursuing an master's in energy law, and you found that Groningen is the right university, right? So how do you suggest that students who would like to pursue an LLM in foreign universities find their right university?
Well, everything's out there on the web. So basically what you do is go look for rankings, look at the professors and see their CVs. So it's a lot of homework. One of the things I've noticed with a lot of students is like they reach out and they expect me to write their cover letter. They expect me to write their statement of purpose. That's not how it works. You have to do your homework. You have to know which university you want to go to. You have to know which masters you want to do. And then from there on, someone can help you. You cannot expect someone else to do your homework for you. So going back to your question, finding the right university is basically like you have to see how the faculty is. So that means like a lot of research. And I would recommend doing that either in the last year of law school or in the fourth year of law school, if you want to go to grad school right out of law school. And
So
if
one
you're
thing I'd like to, yeah, right, go ahead.
But if you're unsure about which major you want to do in or what you want to specialize in, I would highly recommend working so that you know you're like at least you at least have this experience, you or at least introduced to different kind of laws, and you at least know what if you don't. Well, one of the things is like if you don't know what you want, at least you can rule out the things you don't want. So if you work, you would at least have that. That was my experience because I remember when I was still in law school, I started interning from the first year of law school. So I did work with advocacy forum. It was fun. I did human rights and I hated it. So I knew that it wasn't for me. So I would recommend doing that if you're not sure what you want to do. And then do your research. You'll find the university. Look at QS ranking. There's a world ranking there. You can look into that one. If you want to go into a university in Europe, then you look at the QS Europe ranking. If you want to go to a university in US, you look at the US news and the ranking there. So that's how you go. And yeah.
Yeah, I think you pretty much answered, what I was going to ask, because a lot of us, including mostly, that are in 5 years of law school, they do a lot of internships. Even then in, in the fifth year, they're not able to figure out, what kind of specialization they want to go for. But, there is some kind of pressure that they want to pursue LLMs, and they end up going for more of a general LLM. So what is your take on, going for a general LLM or going for specialization like you did?
Well, here's the thing, not everyone is the same. So if you're perfectly fine living with your decision, if you're perfectly fine doing a general LLM and then you graduate and you get a job, you like the job, then it's perfectly fine. But then again, like LLM is an investment in a sense, like you invest your time, money, effort, everything. So you need to make sure that you don't regret it. That's the main thing. But as to like getting a general LLM, I cannot really tell you about that because I didn't do it. I really don't know.
Yeah.
But as far as like specializing in something is concerned, I would say it's pretty awesome.
Mhm.
So,
Like I
So,
did when I was when I completed my law, I wanted to do the LLM right away, right? So there were certain things that came to my mind because I come from a different kind of background. So I
mhm,
studied finance first, right? So I was sure that I wanted to specialize in one of the areas of finance, but even then,
mhm.
I was confused, like whether I want to go for tax, whether I want to go for a specific, project financing or stuff like that. So even at the point of application, I was like, so sometimes even when you are sure what you want to do, maybe just to get an idea of other areas or something like that, you may want to choose something else. And also, I
Mhm.
think there are factors like scholarships, availability
Yeah.
of scholarships on your particular course. I think that also frames or helps to shape your decision. So how much of that thing worked in your case? Like when you went for energy law, were you sure that you only wanted to pursue energy law, or you had other options as well?
Oh, I didn't have any other option. I was going for energy from the very beginning. So
Right.
with that, having said that, I would say like basically whatever you said is right. You need to be
Mhm.
aware of what it is because I get like a lot of students ask me, okay, you do energy law. Is it like environmental law? No. It's far
Right.
from environmental law. I'm not an environmental lawyer. I don't do toxic torts and stuff. So what I do is basically
True.
project finance or regulatory aspect of energy. And it entails like oil and gas, electricity, whatever, you name it. But what I focus on is electricity. So that means like I help builders or developers develop energy farms.
Mhm.
And I'm not an engineer, so I do it on the legal side. So I guess
Right.
like coming back to the point, I think it's basically like you have to do your homework. You really
Mhm.
have to, because if you want to go ahead and get a general LLM, it's fine. But if
Mhm.
you want to go into something like, let's say, energy, you need to know what it is. Because I remember when I first started university in Groningen, because in Nepal, you
Mhm.
know this, like we don't have a gas system. So for us, it's
Right.
like LNG.
Yeah.
We're used to seeing like cylinders. We're not used to seeing a
yeah.
gas system. So the first month, I would say it took me a while to understand like the basics of how the energy network works, like even how the gas is supplied, how the gas that people use to cook comes from, where it comes from, how it's connected and everything. So everything you need to do your homework. That's what I would say. And well, what was the other question?
Okay,
I
so to
think.
add to the question, like you said, your more of your specialization seems that you specialized in energy law because you were more interested in it. So apart from interest, are there any other areas like a person has to look for to choose their specialization area?
Um, well, if you ask me, I would say it's for me, it has been more about passion than anything else. And I really like doing business work and I have a knack for it. That's one of the things. I did like working. I when I was in law school, I kind of like criminal law, but I knew that I didn't want to do it.
Mhm.
But I also know the fact that not everyone knows what they want to do. And going back to
Mm,
Kailas's question as to whether you should have a backup LLM just because you think that you will get a scholarship in that, I would say
Right.
no. Because when I was in
Mhm.
law school, I remember people were like, oh, if you want to study corporate law, there's no way you're going to get a scholarship. But the
Yeah.
fact is,
okay.
like, you will get a scholarship if you try. You need to
Right.
at least have that. You need to believe in yourself enough to go ahead, apply, and try. But you can always, it's always good to have backups. I had backups as to university. Not
Mhm.
really, but yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because
So
I think I can add to that as well, because
okay.
like I did my LLB from University of Delhi, and there were a
Mm-hmm.
lot of young people who had just come from graduation, and they were doing law as a post graduation, and then they wanted to right away go for LLMs abroad. And I remember few of them joining very general kind of courses, and ended up coming back to India, and then again starting it from the scratch, joining the law firm, and then again working whatever area of interest they want to work on, and then maybe slowly building and again going for another LLM or something like that.
But that's the thing. Like you don't need to
Yeah.
rush into getting an LLM unless you're certainly sure what you want to do, because it doesn't
Right.
change anything. It really doesn't
True.
change anything unless you, well, if, I would say if you want to start a career, let's say somewhere else, you don't want to work in Nepal, that makes sense. And you're sure that you want to do something else and you're fine with the general LLM or just getting a corporate law degree, then it's fine. But if you are not sure and you feel like you want to work in Nepal, then don't rush
Yeah.
into it. Just don't.
Okay. So really you continued your postgraduate studies right after your graduate studies, right? You did not take any break. So you also have two different postgraduate certificates from two different universities in two different jurisdictions, one even summa cum laude. So what is your opinion regarding pursuing postgraduate courses right after your graduate courses, and the other being taking a break from your studies, gaining some practical experience, and then going for postgraduate?
Well, your videos, like, it's frozen.
What is your take on this? Okay.
Well, I would say like with this one, it's funny because I was burned out. I was burned out at the end of the 7th year, which was like 5 years of law school, first master's, second master's. It was like, can't do anything anymore. So I didn't take the bar exam back then because of that. So what I
Yeah.
would say is, if, again, going back to my earlier response, it's like, it depends on what you want. I know I'm not really helping, but it also depends on what you want to do. If you, for instance, if you want to start your career somewhere else, let's say you don't want to waste any time, you're done with your undergrad, you're like, okay, I want to go to New York, I want to be admitted in New York, I want to study in New York, and I want to work in New York. So it's not easy, but still it's possible. So what you do is, like, you apply for your master's, you go in, and then you take the courses accordingly so that you can take the bar exam, and you network and you get a job and you work. And in US, for foreign students, one of the things is, like, after you complete your LLM, you get an OPT, which is basically optional practical training, which allows you to work in US for a year without sponsorship. That's one of the things.
Okay.
If you want to stay abroad, you also need to make sure that the country that you're applying for is willing to sponsor your visa, because it's an investment. Not everyone gets a scholarship, and even if you do, you're like not working. So in the time while you could make money, you're actually studying. So if you want to go abroad, work abroad, then you need to factor in these things too. You need to see whether or not you're going to get a post-graduation like visa, because with law, it is way difficult to get a visa in US compared to anything else, like computer science degree, because they need more people like that. They already have enough lawyers. So
Okay.
Yeah, also another thing I've heard about, regarding hiring of lawyers is, bringing more businesses. So
yeah,
I think, they hire more Indian people because they have a larger market, right? But for Nepal,
yep.
it's a very small market. And I think, what they would be thinking is there is nothing much in terms of business that a new associate or a new hiree will bring in. So that might be one of the consideration as well, because that's what I've heard from a lot of, people who are working in international law firms. Like, they value the business, or
No, of course,
what kind of
yes.
thing you bring in, right?
Of course, that's true.
Yeah, okay.
That's true, because it's like you will see a lot of Chinese students getting
Yeah.
hired because they want someone who speaks Mandarin or Cantonese.
Right.
And then their business is running out of China, so they need someone who would do that. So the chances of them getting hired is way more than a Nepali getting hired. But having said that, it's not impossible, because I got a job in
Yeah.
like a big law firm. So I don't think it's impossible, but you have to sell yourself, basically.
True.
Yeah.
And yes, because it's a smaller market, it is harder to sell yourself just because you're a Nepali, but you have other things that adds to your value.
True.
Other than you being a Nepali. So
Okay. So Kailas, I would also like to direct this question to you. So what is your opinion regarding this, taking a break from your studies and then gaining some experience before actually going for post-graduation? Because you actually, you went into practice before going for post-graduation, right?
Yeah. So, I have a different kind of story. So maybe, you can call me more of like a with soul, because I chartered accountancy first and moved to law, right? So when I completed my chartered accountancy, I had no clue as to what I wanted to do. So whether it's a practice or joining a corporate job, or, anything else. So, after that, I worked with an organization. So it was more like an exploration for me, right? So I wanted to explore and figure out what I wanted to do. Like Subrata, I was not so sure about, what I wanted in life or
I
where my
was very
passion lied.
lucky. Yeah.
So yeah, in that sense, I envy, people who are very sure about what they want to do in life. So for me, it was more like trial and error, right? So after chartered accountancy, I worked with a company in a corporate finance domain. I worked for a year. It was a good program. It was something like a leadership development program wherein, you would be working on different verticals within the organization and then will be placed as a manager, after 2 years. But I had to leave that midway because I didn't like the kind of work. So,
Yeah.
and then I joined law, right? So it was, even joining law was kind of an abrupt decision because a bit of it was, kind of peer pressure because everyone, I was working with we were of same age, and somebody was coming from engineering background, someone from business. I was from finance, and then all we wanted to do was, go for higher studies. So it might be an MBA or something else. So since I didn't want to work with any organization further, I wanted to have my own practice. So that I had made sure of because I would want to go into consulting or have a individual practice. So that's when I thought I didn't want to go to MBA, like, eliminating what you don't want to do, like Subrata
Yeah.
said
Yeah.
earlier. So I eliminated that. So the other options that were left were, I either go back to chartered accountancy practice or, go for some other professional courses. So that's where law came into picture. It's not that it was not my interest and I just picked it up randomly. I was interested in law. And then, Delhi, I got into University of Delhi. It had a good ranking. Its LLB is still considered one of the best. So it was a, good opportunity for me. And then while in law school also, I was not doing, what a typical law student would do, like, doing internships and extracurricular because I was working in finance because I was still, I wanted to work in finance domain as well. Because, and then it's when, I work now in various areas of finance, like investment banking, taxation, general accounting and stuff. And also, during the final year of law school, there is again, some kind of peer pressure being built that, okay, you have to go for further studies now. So you have to rush for your LLMs because a lot of my friends, they had started writing SOPs, researching on universities and all. But that was something that I didn't want to do because I was sure of one thing, because being a chartered accountant, I knew that, I could go into taxation or something very finance specific, like merger and acquisitions or simply corporate law. So that I had figured out. And then also I wanted to see, the practical aspects because since then, until that point, because I didn't intern anywhere with a lawyer or any law firm, I actually wanted to work in a law environment, right? So that was the reason that I wanted to work for some time. So I was placed with one of a large, corporate law firms in India in the tax department, wherein you'd be amazed that everyone. While I was thinking that I must be only few of the species that did chartered accountancy and law, but in that particular department, like everyone was chartered accountant and a lawyer. So it's like going back to your own home kind of thing. So, so familiar with all stuff. But something happened, and then, I had to move back to Nepal. Until then, I had no plans to move back because India being a larger market and, a bigger market. So I had seen, certain career progression over there. But, something happened that, forced me to come back to Nepal. And then it's when I came back to Nepal, saw the legal environment here, and then worked with a law firm for almost a year and a half. I think the experience was very good because I got a very good mentor. Uh, so I would say in 1.5 years of experience, I knew pretty much everything in terms of setting up a practice or dealing with your clients, which I find it has helped me a lot. And then that's the point when I wanted when I had to make decisions. Like I was sure that I had to build my own practice, and that too in Nepal. So I had no idea of I didn't want to go outside or work outside. So, and that's where I had two choices. So either I go for tax specialization or something else. Since I had not worked in tax domain specifically, and in particularly in Nepal, if you were to start your own practice, I don't think picking up a niche would help in the initial
Yeah.
time.
That's
So
true.
that's the reason that I wanted to go for more of a finance domain. And then, some universities had great courses, like Oxford had something new. They didn't have an LLM or LLM for finance. I think they have BCL courses, but there was this course called Master in Law and Finance, which was, combination of it. It was half MBA stuffs and half legal stuff. So that was a perfect fit for me, right? And then again, I also applied to, a couple of other universities, but unfortunately, I couldn't go through because of the funding and all. Maybe, it was lack of preparation. Like, that's when I realized, you have to be very prepared if you want to go for LLM. It's like, you have to be serious, like it's your job to, get through and
Yeah.
then get everything. Because for me, I was working with a law firm, and then I treated it more like as an alternative or a plan B, because I was not serious about the application itself. Because you'd be amazed that I made my applications, all my applications at the deadline dates. I had no SOP, or I had no written submissions. I think most of people can relate to me, like, right? So you just
Okay.
put it off, and then until the final day comes, like, so
Okay. So
pretty much, to
It's
explore
cutting
and
off.
then figure it out what I want to do. So maybe I had it figured it out for now. So I think it's important to
okay.
explore and know more if you're not sure of what you want to do.
Okay, so you talked about funding, right? So I'll direct this question to Subhadra again. So there's so many potential applicants with all the required qualifications and experiences, and yet they don't even apply for an LLM just because they fear that they will not have proper funding. Or many applicants have to let go of their admission seats because they do not find the proper funding. So how do you propose that applications seek or find the right funding? And also, could you tell us more about like how can one approach properly for scholarship funding for LLM? Because I believe you did your master's with a full scholarship, I guess.
Yeah. Um, with that one, I would say like there's so many funding out there. You just have to look for it. There's so many scholarships. I'm amazed how people think that they cannot get scholarships. If you have the right credentials, and it's not always your grades. If you have good grades, that's awesome. If you have good grades and if you have like internship experiences, you have like you did all the extracurricular stuff and you show that you really want to do whatever you've applied for in your statement of purpose and all that and your essays, and you have good test score, you will get in. And then scholarship also, one of the things in my experience has been like it's also a little bit of luck, but then of course like you don't get lucky without working hard, so it's a
True.
mix of both of them. For me, like I remember when I went to Groningen, I got into the university, and I was sort of like prepared to pay for my education, but I also wanted the scholarship. And I was waitlisted, which is worse than getting rejected. So I was waitlisted. I was on top of the waiting list. And then, so that's how I am. So I got rejected. I like cried about it. I complained about it for like a week. And then I moved on and I applied to PACE because PACE was supposed to be like a good school for environmental and energy law. And I also applied to Columbia. I got in and I applied for external scholarships too. I applied to OFID. I didn't get that. And well, at PACE, I applied for a fellowship because I remember I don't know if you know Ambersar.
I know.
So basically,
I
he was
know
like,
from
yeah, because he was my thesis supervisor. He was constantly asking me to apply to PACE. And there was this fellowship. So I applied to that fellowship, but I didn't get it because I didn't have enough experience for that. But instead of that, because I had like good credentials, I got a scholarship. So I went in and I could defer the admission for like a year. So my idea was to basically work for a bit. I was working at Pradhan and I wanted to work for a bit and then go on and get my master's. That was my idea. But then once I started working, it was funny. It's like I was lucky. When I started working at Pradhan, I I got the results for the bar exam, and
okay.
that was like so that was when I was told like I got on top of the list. I was like, oh, pretty amazing because I didn't think I would. And the next day I got an email from Groningen. They were like, oh, you're now the one who got the scholarship. Do you want to come in? I'm pretty sure you've applied to other universities elsewhere. Do you want to come in? I was like, oh, yes. And then I just went. And
Okay.
when I was done with my first master's, I felt like I wanted to do another master's. And one of the things was also like I got like a full scholarship, but I still had to pay for my living expenses.
Yeah.
That I didn't get with New York. I did get like everything from Groningen, even like my visa application fee and my airfare and everything. So it was basically they were paying me to study there, which was pretty awesome. And
Right.
at Pace, it wasn't the same thing. I didn't have to pay for my tuition, but I had to pay for my living expenses. And my family was supportive enough. So they asked me to go ahead if I wanted to get another master's. They were like, okay, go ahead. So for me, I did that because I also wanted to like specialize a little bit on the business side of energy. And I also wanted to take the New York bar. So that was one of the reasons why I moved. So that was my
Okay.
experience with funding. And I didn't go for government scholarships because I had no intentions of going back. And if you go for government scholarships like Chevening or Fulbright
Yeah.
or Erasmus Mundus, anything, there are like a lot of them. You have to go back. So I was targeting like university-wide scholarship because there are
Yeah.
universities that give out scholarships. There are a lot of them. You just have to look for them.
Okay. So if the scholarship funding that you receive is not enough, so is it possible that uh, you work other jobs and still continue your LM? Because uh, so many funding, as you said, they will also only cover your tuition fees, not your living expenses. So in that case, can students still work other jobs and then continue their LLM regularly? What about the stress and the time commitment you have to give to your studies as well?
Okay, that I can tell you. With the, I cannot
Okay.
tell you if it's enough with working outside because you cannot work outside in the US. You have to work
Right.
in school, like in campus. So you just get to work like 20 hours a week. You cannot go beyond that. It's like, it's not legal. So you don't want to
Mm,
do it. You're going to practice
Right.
law. So that's not something you want to do.
yeah.
But I worked at school. So first I worked at the IT, and for the first time I said worked at the IT, and I was lucky enough that Pace had this energy center. So I got to work with gas rate making, electricity rate making. I don't know if you're aware of that, but I got to work with like energy projects. So my day would begin at 6 in the morning, and I would go to the university and do the readings because unlike in Nepal, you have to do your readings. You want to do them because they will definitely cold call you. So you want to be prepared. So that's one of the things. So I would go to university, I would study, and then my classes would normally begin at 9 in the morning. So I would go to the classes, and in between classes, I would go to the library and study, and I would work as well. So I was working 20 hours a week, and I was taking the maximum amount of courses you could take. So my classes would go until like 8 at night, and I would go back to library, study a bit, and then hang out with my friends because you have to have a social life too. So
Right.
I guess it's possible. It just so everything boils down to what you want at the end of the day, if you're willing to do it or not. It's not
Okay.
impossible.
Okay. Let me just go back to this funding area again. Okay.
Yeah.
So could you elaborate a little bit on the things to hit, like the things that one needs to take care of for the right approach to get the funding? Like how to approach the funding agencies?
Funding agencies, as in like, so I know of OFIT scholarship. It's like so you apply for that. You have to get into a school first, and then you apply for the
Yeah.
scholarship, and then they select you from a pool of candidates from all over the world. So it's a hit or miss. You cannot be certain. I didn't get it, so I don't know. And then there's Fulbright, right? I'm not really
Yeah.
aware
Yeah.
of how it works. I know that you have to apply like 2 years in advance, and it's like
Hmm.
pretty hard to get. And in Nepal, it's very political too. So, that's how it works in
Yeah.
Nepal.
Yeah. Right.
And then there's Chevening. A lot of my friends got Chevening. So I believe that you can get it if you have, but you need to have good grades, and you also need to show that you have the extracurricular activities. I think that's what they take into account. It's the leadership more than anything else with Chevening.
Mhm.
That's what I
Right.
think, but I'm not sure. As far as the scholarship that I got, I couldn't actively apply for the scholarship. They would have to pull out you as a candidate for the scholarship because you would have to mention that you would like to be considered. And if they thought you were good enough, they would pull you out of the pool and then put you on the scholarship thing after they made a decision with the admission. So if you got that, if you got into the pool, after that, they would make the decision. So there was nothing you could do except for writing essays and try and convince them that you deserve it and why you deserve it.
Okay, so for scholarship, many of the scholarships, like it seems like extracurricular is very important. So
It's a mix.
what about the admission process? Like how does a student's grades in undergraduates or his or her involvement in extracurriculars affect the admission request?
Here's the thing. So not everyone has excellent grades. So, but if you have enough work on the site to show that you did something else, you have to make a case for yourself. It's like business, basically. You have to sell yourself.
Okay.
So if you can make a case like, okay, I don't have the excellent grades, but look at the extracurricular activities I have. I've done this and that. I've like done all these sort of internships, I've moot courts, I've written paper, I've managed my time. Then your chances are very high. I remember when I did it. So I just know what I did. I cannot tell you about what everyone else did. I had the perfect score. I had like the perfect grades. That I would say I did. But I also had internship experience from like the first year of law school. That's a lot. I had it until like the fifth year of law school. And I also started doing moot courts from third year of law school. So third year, fourth year, fifth year. And I was also doing like debate on the side. And I wrote like, I think 2 or 3 papers before I got into grad school. And I was doing a fellowship when I applied for grad school. So I had a lot going on. I had no time. I had no social life. But other than that, it got me somewhere. So my story is very different from someone else's story. So I cannot tell you as to what applies to everybody. It's a blanket statement if I say that. But I can tell you what worked for me. And that's what worked for me.
Okay.
I think I can add some to that, like a lot of people don't apply just because, they're skeptical about, the requirements. They see the requirement list and they're, like afraid, what to do or what not to do. I think the best thing is, just go and apply. So if you're sure about it, go and apply, because I've seen a lot of friends, they have, kind of a very good profile, because I've seen people with better profile than I have, not applying. And then, for me, like I just made the applications, and then I was lucky enough to get into all the application that I made. The only part was, I was not prepared well. I didn't do my homework. That's where I failed, I guess, as far as funding and all those things are concerned. And maybe, that was the way it had to be. And I think, that's how it went. But, frankly speaking, I think the best thing is to do is, research it and then apply. And if you have some questions or if you have some, issues, you can, I think, directly write to the law school as well. The admission team, they're very helpful. They get back to you if you have certain reservations or you want to. Actually, so they are more than willing to help. And I think that's very important for everyone willing to, they are sure about going for an LLM. Then, you have to be, that should be your plan A. You shouldn't, keep it as a backup plan. Like, okay, I'll make the application. If it goes through, fine. If it doesn't, and it is pretty likely that it would not go through, right? So you have to be prepared. So that's my thing. And you can ask me, what might go wrong with your funding things, because if you don't make applications on time, if you miss the deadline, that's where the things go wrong. And I think that's pretty much where it went wrong for me.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but that's with everything in life.
Right.
See, you will get rejected multiple times. I applied for 3,000 jobs before I got the job I wanted. So it's not easy. You have to do it.
Yeah, true.
Unless you're born with a silver spoon. I wasn't in this term. My family is not in law, so that wasn't how it was for me. But you have to apply. You have to be okay with rejections. Of course, you can be sad about it for like a couple of days. If you want, you can be sad about it for a week, but then you have to move on and you have to keep applying. That's one of the things, because I remember, like, I have a CV of failures. If you guys are connected with me on LinkedIn, you will see.
I saw you sharing that the other day.
So basically, that's how it works for everyone. Everyone fails. Just that sometimes someone, like, it seems like everything worked out for someone. For instance, if you look at my life from the outside, it looks like everything worked out perfectly well for me, but it didn't. So
okay, so
I would say, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So you talked about getting jobs abroad, right? So we also have a question from our participant regarding a career abroad, a job abroad, a legal job abroad. So could you tell us more about how you applied for those jobs, or how you get qualified for those jobs, and how can one actually practice law in other countries by studying law in Nepal or somewhere else?
That's a pretty broad question, but I'll try to answer it as much as I can.
Okay.
So with my experience has been like, I studied in the Netherlands and then I moved to New York and I was studying. And then I remember I was still in law school when I applied for the job that I got. And I got it after a year of application. So that's a long time. So that was one of the things. But I would say like you have to network. That's the main thing. You can apply for like thousands of jobs online. If you get lucky, you might get the job, but most of the times it's networking. You have to actively cold call people, cold email people, follow up, show up. You have to do everything you can. So basically it's a lot of networking, and you have to sell yourself. You have to have like the thing that they call elevator speech. That's like who you are, what you want, and why you want it, and what are you bringing to the table. So basically you have to have that, and that's about it. So as long as you think you can, and as long as you're willing to persevere, I'm pretty sure you'll get a job.
Okay, so could you also tell us about your experience regarding how difficult and or how different it is to work in a jurisdiction where you did not do your graduate studies? Like you worked in Netherlands, you worked in New York, but before that you had to study law in Nepal. So how is it different there?
Well, that aspect was okay, because honestly, law cross board, it's the same. They just name it like civil and common. It's almost the same. Yes, certain concepts are different. So you would have to sort of like go through stuff and then prepare yourself for that. But other than that, it's nothing, like it's not something you don't already know. If you're a qualified lawyer, you'll be fine. As long as you know how to read things, and as long as you understand the legal jargon and everything, you'll be fine. But going back to like working in the Netherlands, it was pretty difficult because I don't speak Dutch and everything is in Dutch. So I can read Dutch though. So a lot of the times I had to like go to people. For instance, if there was something that was like extremely complicated and I couldn't understand that, I did do an M&A course in law school, but there was at one point I was advising a company on one of the energy deals, and it involved like bunch of companies. So I needed an M&A lawyer, and it was in Dutch. And had it been in English, I could like sort of follow through and understand, but I couldn't because it was in Dutch. So I had to go to a partner, knock on his door, and I just went in, and then I asked him questions and got the answer. And then I went back and advised my client. So you should be willing to learn a lot. And it also includes learning a new language, which was the case for me. And it was a pretty good experience because the Netherlands is like pretty ahead in the clean energy game. So it was a good thing for me that I worked there. And also like while I was there, because Eversheds is like an international law firm, it has offices everywhere. So I was working with my colleagues from UK and US office. So it was a good networking opportunities. And one of the things I've noticed so far is like people started taking me way more seriously after I worked with Eversheds. Like, bigger law firms. Before that, I would cold call people and then I would talk to them, but it wasn't as if like they weren't really interested in my profile as much. But then one of the main things that changed was after I worked with Eversheds and I left, but after that, now I talk to any law firm. Now I talk to like people from Winston & Strawn or from White & Case or Allen & Overy or Baker McKenzie. They're interested in me. So that's a big change for me. But we'll see what happens.
Okay, so I'll go back to Kailash now. So you also did your LLB from Delhi. That's basically Indian law only. So how did you adapt after coming back to Nepal and then practice law here?
I think, practicing part was easy. The difficult part was, appearing for the bar examination because I had no clue about the procedural law and all
Okay.
those things. And then corporate law only accounted for maybe around 25 marks or so. So I almost got a fever during my bar examination. So
Okay.
it was like difficult, right? So in terms of work, it was relatively easy because I had worked earlier in India, and then I think the working culture in India and Nepal is pretty much similar. The only difference is we are very calm, relaxed over here, so it's relatively easy, even easier to
Okay.
work here, while working in India may be a little stressful because earlier also I had been accustomed to those environment because during my chartered accountancy course also I had worked for almost 3.5 years with an auditing firm wherein we had to always uh, rush to meet the deadline specifically. So meeting the deadline was never a problem for me because I was used to it. The only difficult part I would say, coming here and getting to know was, I had to start from the basics because I had to read the law.
Mm.
Another important thing was, to read the law in Nepali. That's
Oh
that's
yeah,
very important
that was a
because
problem for me
yeah,
too.
yeah, because you read everything in English and then come here and then yeah, the problem is even to advise an international client, you had to read it in Nepali because most of the time you end up reading the translation and giving away the wrong information or wrong kind of
Yeah.
advice. So that was that. And also another fact, the advising part is easy. The more difficult part, I think, is using a lot of English words at the time of pleading before the
Yeah.
pleading at the courts because that's something I you know I cannot help it with, and I think the judges are pretty okay with that. So in that term, they are very willing to give you allow you to speak in English. So that's great, I think. So I didn't see a lot of difference. As Subrata said, it's law after all, so the basic principles remain the same. You need to know how to read the law and how to interpret the law. So that's
Yeah.
that's the most important thing. Apart from that, I think it was pretty much the same.
Yeah, to add to that, it's more about, Iraq,
Yeah,
basically. You need to
yeah,
know how to analyze laws. That's
right,
it.
true.
And adding on to that, I remember like when I worked in New York, that was before I moved to Amsterdam. When I worked in New York, it was like also like I did go to school in Netherlands and US, and I was working in energy in Netherlands. So that wasn't like an entirely new thing for me. But working in US, I remember when I first went to the court, I went to an administrative court. That's where I was working. I wasn't working at the court. I was working with New York City. But when I first went to the court and then I had to plead before the court, the judge, I just didn't know what I was
Mhm.
doing, but I had like an excellent mentor. He was so good. I
Right.
think I've been lucky in that regard too. Like in law school, I had Amber sir, Rupa ma'am. They
Mhm.
were really kind and they were really nice. Other than that, I had no one. But and in Netherlands, I had good professors. And actually, one of my professors sent out my resume to Eversheds, one of the partners at Eversheds, and he was in New York. He interviewed me in New York, and he really liked me. And that was one of the ways I got the job. Actually, I did have to apply, but
Mhm.
I saw the question pop up. So it was basically I was recommended by a professor. So that's one of the things you would always want. You need to be good enough and you need to be really good at what you do to be recommended by someone because they're putting their prestige
Right.
at stake for you.
Stay.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So it's a reputation, it's not just you. So you have to prove yourself for that.
Mhm.
But as long as you try, it's pretty much
Yeah.
possible. And one of the things that I don't see in the questions, but I would say is like, with if you think you want to work abroad and if you think you want to work in corporate law and all that stuff, make sure that you look into the visa situation. Make sure that you have that at the back
Right.
of your head. Like you need to know that. That's one of the things I would say. So if I were you, I would look into Canadian schools because in Canada, the
Okay.
visa process is very different. It's like after you study in Canada, you get like 3 years of
Mm.
work visa, so you can work there. Or in the Netherlands, you get to work for like a year after you graduate,
Right.
and
Mhm.
it's very likely if you do a good job, they'll hire you, they'll retain you. So the visa sponsorship is not a big deal in Netherlands either. It is a big deal in US. So that's why a lot of lawyers, Nepali lawyers,
Right.
all they do is immigration.
Yeah, yeah.
And then they'll tell you it's the only thing you can do. It's not true.
Okay. So we've talked about pursuing an LLM abroad and then working abroad. So what do you think, like, how does a LLM, so foreign LLM helps our home practice now? If someone has to come back to Nepal and then work, how do you think an LLM in foreign university will add credentials?
Well, it gives you an experience, right? You move to a different place, you start living a different life, you see so many things. And it's more like people traveling and coming back and starting a business that wasn't there in the first place. It's the same thing. You learn a lot of stuff in the classroom,
Right.
outside of the classroom, you build a network. See, that's the thing, that's the main thing. You build a network and you go
Sure.
back and you have a network of people across the globe. So that's an advantage. And of course, you learn everything in the classroom. You can always use it. But more than that, I think it's the human aspect of it and the social aspect of it that really helps you in the long run, because you can read anything off of the book and be fine. You don't really need a
Right.
degree to understand something.
True.
Yeah.
I think, I can also add a little bit to that because, if you are aware or not, because LLM is more kind of, building your net, like Subrata has been telling about networks, right? So how networks work is some of your friends, somewhere down the line, it might not help you immediately, but somewhere down the line. So if you have good contacts, you made a good, you made a good amount of people across the board, from every countries around the world. So whenever a new kind of assignment that might be coming, that might be Nepal specific. So the first person that would, get recommended is you because you have built a connection, right? So that way also, that might be one of the ways that might be helpful if you go for a foreign LLM rather than doing it here, because you do it here, the same people, right? So it's the same cohort of people. It's not that, I don't mean to say that don't do LLMs here. You do that, right? But the difference between foreign LLM and a Nepali LLM is, getting to experience something new and knowing to know a lot of people across the world. And, everything ultimately helps. Like, I think I put it in my previous conversation also, you cannot connect the dots looking forward. So, somewhere down the line, you will see that, how things fall into place and how things would make sense.
Yeah. And also, like, you get to live in a different place, you get to
Right.
travel a lot,
Experience a
you get
different
to like
culture.
experience a different culture. Yeah, that adds
Yeah.
and that changes you as a human being. That's one of the
Right.
main things. And I would say, like, I have friends who work with one biggest companies. Like, one of them works with DLA Piper, the one I studied with. It's a big firm too.
Right.
And a bunch of them work with like TSOs, which is like transmission system operators around Europe. And one of them works for one of the biggest oil companies. And my friends from US, they work with like the government, they work at big firms. So you have a network. So if something
Right.
comes up, you're the first one to know, because
Right.
they'll help you, because if they know you're
Okay.
looking for something, an opportunity.
Yeah,
So.
definitely.
Okay, so we are almost at the end of the session now. We only have like 5 minutes left. So here in Nepal, the 28th Nepal Bar Council license exam is also right around the corner. Like, if it were not for the virus, then many of the participants today would have been sitting for the license exam. So whether you were a topper of your batch in your university and then again in the bar license exam. So would you like to give any tips to the license examinees?
First of all, to correct yourself, I wasn't the topper. I didn't get the gold medal. I was like, I think
Yeah,
third
sorry.
student or something. But well, it was somebody else who got it. So why should I
Yeah,
I
right.
lie to you?
Yeah, sorry,
And
my bad.
no, it's okay. With the bar exam, yes, I was. I don't know. I just studied for like a month, I think, and went pretty well. And I think I got like good score with the file writing. That's like the easiest bit, like Mutsulka and all that stuff. That
Yeah.
was easy for me back then, not anymore. But
I think that was the most difficult one I had.
no, I think because I practiced.
Yeah,
That's the thing.
right. Yeah. So I think, maybe, yeah, that's all about preparation, I guess, because, if I got through means I believe anyone can get through it. So that's my, take on it.
So are there any specifics like you would like to give tips, like study hard, drink water well, or any other such tips that you have? Like you also, Kailash, he also managed to get in top 15 even after doing his law in India. So are there any specific tips you'd like to give?
Well, believe in yourself, basically. And yeah, of course, stay hydrated. It helps.
Right.
Okay. So we are almost at the end. So would you like to conclude, Subrata?
Well, as I said before, just believe in yourself and try. Like, people will tell you it's not possible. It's possible. If I can
Right.
do it, you can obviously do it. That's the only thing I have to say. If I could do it, anyone can do it.
Yeah, I would like to, add to what Subrata said earlier, like, sell yourself. That's very important. So I think that you can do right from your law school. I see a lot of people, not using, certain good platforms in a good way. So there is LinkedIn, I guess, to which you can connect to a lot of people
Oh yeah.
abroad. You have some questions you can ask, you can ask them for help. So it's more like an opportunity that a lot of people seem to be missing. So if I were to advise young people on that aspect, on networking and building networks, so I think LinkedIn is a great tool. Make a great profile that might act as your CV. So, and definitely if you are, looking to make your career abroad, that should be, you should start making connections right now, I guess. So that's
Yeah.
also something to look
Yeah,
for.
and also like when you connect with someone on LinkedIn, don't jump into like, oh, I need a job,
Right.
don't ask for
Yeah,
favor right
true,
away.
true.
That's not the right
Yeah,
way to go. First
yeah,
of all, network, get to know the person, build a connection.
exactly.
That's the main thing. Don't jump into
Right.
what you want. No one will help you if you do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you reach out to someone, they'll already know
Okay.
that you want
So,
something.
Yeah.
okay. So thank you so much, Subrata and Kailash, for being here. And I guess our
Pleasure.
second session also went well. You
Yeah.
can see these videos on the YouTube as well. So for more
I don't want to see
sessions
myself.
and discussions, you can follow us. You can follow us at LinkedIn as well. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Subrata. Thank you, Kailash, and thank you all the participants for your time today. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you so
thank you
much.
for
I think
having
with
me.
this, I think we'll end this. So thank you, Subrata, for joining again.
You're
Thank you so
welcome.
much.
Thanks for having me. Okay, bye. Good luck to everyone.
Yeah.